If you're a U.S. person who's ever worked abroad and has a foreign retirement plan, you could be sitting on a tax compliance time bomb without even knowing it. This is where foreign retirement systems slam into U.S. tax law, creating one of the most complex and, frankly, most aggressively penalized areas of compliance out there. So let's start our forensic analysis and see how this all unfolds.
The entire problem really starts right here. The IRS just doesn't care what your plan is called back home. Pension, superannuation, Provident Fund, it doesn't matter. For U.S. tax purposes, that label is completely irrelevant. Instead, the IRS looks at how the thing actually works. It applies a strict functional test. And that right there, that's the tripwire.
So here's our game plan for this deep dive. First, we're going to break down how a simple pension gets reclassified into a trust. Then, we'll figure out what kind of trust we're dealing with by looking at who put the money in. From there, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the reporting forms, we'll look at the absolutely insane penalties for getting it wrong, and finally, we'll explore if there's any way out through relief options. All right, let's tackle the foundational issue. This is the one move that kicks off every other problem we're going to talk about. It's that moment when the IRS stops seeing your foreign pension as a pension and starts seeing it as a trust. This is it. This is the million-dollar question that every single U.S. person with a foreign retirement account has to answer. Because if the answer is yes, well, a whole new world of incredibly complex reporting just opened up for you.
So how does the IRS even make this call? It all comes down to Treasury Regulation 301.7701-4. And look at how broad this definition is. If you have an arrangement with a fiduciary like a pension administrator holding assets to protect them for beneficiaries, like you, then guess what? It meets the definition of a trust. And if you're thinking, hey, that sounds exactly like a pension, you're right. That's the trap.
Okay, so we've established it's a trust. But is it a foreign trust? The regs give us this two-part test. It's considered foreign if it fails either one. And here's the kicker. Foreign pensions are run by foreign trustees under foreign law, so they almost always fail the control test. There's just no way a U.S. person can control all substantial decisions. So, boom, it's a foreign trust.
Now that we've tagged it as a foreign trust, our forensic analysis moves to the next crucial step. We have to determine what kind of foreign trust it is. And the answer to that is all about following the money. Who funded it? Essentially, there are two main paths it can go down. If your employer put in most of the money, it's likely something called a non-exempt employees trust. But, and this is the big one, if it was mostly funded by you, the employee, it gets classified as a Foreign Grantor Trust. This is the one you really have to watch out for, because it means you have to report all of its earnings on your U.S. return every year. And, most importantly, it's what triggers the whole Form 3520 and 3528 nightmare. Now get this, because this is where it gets really wild. What if both you and your employer contributed? Well, the regulations have an answer for that. If your contributions are not incidental, basically more than a tiny amount, the IRS performs this incredible feat of tax alchemy. It literally splits your single pension plan into two different things for tax purposes. The employer part is one type of trust, and the part you funded becomes a foreign grantor trust that you have to report on.
So what happens once you've determined that your pension, or at least a piece of it, is a foreign grantor's trust? Well, you've just been dropped into the reporting world of IRC Section 6048. And that means one thing: paperwork. We're talking about two main forms here. First is Form 3520. That's the one you, the owner, have to file. You use it to report contributions you made, the fact that you own it, and any money you took out. Then there's Form 3520A. Now, this one is technically supposed to be filed by the foreign trust itself, but as the U.S. owner, it's your job to make sure it gets done. And here's the first major headache. The normal deadline for that Form 3520A, the one the trust is supposed to file, is March 15th. Just keep that date in your head because it's a huge problem. Meanwhile, your personal tax return, along with your Form 3520, is due a month later, on April 15th. You can already see the logistical nightmare brewing, right? How are you supposed to coordinate this? And this is the brilliant, practical solution to that impossible deadline trap. Let's be real for a second. Your old pension administrator in Australia is not going to file a U.S. tax form for you. They just aren't. The IRS knows this, so they created this workaround. You, the U.S. owner, prepare a substitute Form 3520A and just attach it to your own Form 3520. When you do that, the deadline for both forms gets harmonized to your personal due date. It's a lifesaver. Okay, so we know the rules, we know the forms. But what happens if you didn't know any of this and you just didn't file? This is where our analysis takes a dark turn, because the penalties are, and I am not exaggerating, absolutely draconian. Under Internal Revenue Code Section 6677, we're looking at two separate monster penalties. If you fail to report your contributions or distributions, the penalty is the greater of $10,000 or 35% of the gross value. If you fail to get that Form 3520A filed, it's the greater of $10,000 or 5% of the gross value of the assets. Now, the absolutely crucial thing to understand here is that these penalties are not based on tax you owe. They're based on the total value of your retirement savings. It's truly breathtaking. Let me put that in real numbers for you. Let's say your plan has $1 million employee-funded portion that's treated as a grantor trust. If you simply fail to file that substitute Form 3520A for 1 year, the automatic penalty is $50,000 for one missed form. And if you think you can just argue your way out of this in court, think again. The Second Circuit was crystal clear in the Wilson case. They said when you're both the owner and the beneficiary, which you are with a pension, and you don't report taking money out, you trigger that massive 35% penalty. The courts are not on your side here. They enforce these rules as written. Okay, after hearing about penalties like that, the obvious question is there any way out of this mess? So let's look at the few relief measures that exist and, more importantly, a couple of recent and very significant shifts in how the IRS handles this. Back in March 2020, the IRS gave us a key piece of guidance, Revenue Procedure 2020-17. This was basically the IRS admitting that the reporting burden for some of these common, highly regulated retirement plans had just gotten out of hand. And it created a specific targeted exemption from filing Forms 3520 and 3520A for certain taxpayers. But here's the catch. The exemption is really narrow. Your plan has to meet this strict 6-part test. It has to be tax-favored locally, have contribution limits, and only allow withdrawals for things like retirement or medical hardship. The problem is, a lot of modern, more flexible plans, like some of the self-managed funds you see in Australia, they just don't fit into this rigid box, which means they're pushed right back into the reporting nightmare. Now this is a huge deal. For years, the IRS computer would just automatically spit out these massive penalty notices the second a late form was filed. Then you'd have to spend a ton of time and money fighting to prove you had a reasonable cause for being late. But the IRS recently announced they've stopped doing that. Now, they will actually review your reasonable cause statement before they even assess the penalty. This is a massive procedural win for taxpayers who are trying to do the right thing. So let's wrap up our forensic file. What are the key takeaways? First, remember that classification is all about how it works, not what it's called. Second, the contribution history is the DNA that tells you if it's an employee, grantor, or even a split bifurcated trust. Third, Forms 3520 and that substitute 3520A are the absolute bedrock of compliance here. Fourth, the penalties are not a slap on the wrist. They are structural and severe. And finally, some relief does exist, but the path is narrow and the qualifications are strict. And that brings us to the final critical question. After walking through this analysis, you have to ask yourself, is my foreign retirement plan a tax-deferred asset that's going to fund my future, or is it an unexploded penalty bomb just waiting to go off? Knowing which side of that line your plan falls on, well, that's everything.